I didn't have this path that was set out in front of me that I was going down. It was much more, my eyes were open for opportunities, and if the opportunity was right, I would very thankfully take it. It's just like the things that you're passionate about, especially for me when there's other people that are involved and that passion is contagious, like you just figure out how to make it work.
Welcome to the Physician Pharmacist podcast, a show designed to shed some light on a very unusual pathway into medicine. I'm your host, Nathan Gartland. I'm a licensed pharmacist and fourth-year medical student. I'm also the author of PharmD to MD and the owner of the Physician Pharmacist Company. As this podcast has grown, we've had the tremendous opportunity to broaden our scope and explore other non-traditional careers. The PharmD opens so many doors, and by listening in, you will have the opportunity to learn from experts in the field on how you can start your own journey today. In today's episode, I have the pleasure of speaking with Dr. Yair Saperstein. Dr. Saperstein is a dual board certified physician in internal medicine and clinical informatics that is affiliated with Mount Sinai Hospital. He served on the implementation team for multiple Epic go-lives and was an inpatient medicine chief resident at Kings County Hospital, leading over 400 providers through the New York's first wave of COVID. Dr. Saperstein graduated from Albert Einstein College of Medicine with distinction in research in global health and from SUNY Downstate with a master's in public health and hospital policy and management. Previously, Dr. Saperstein co-founded and led two nonprofit organizations for over 10 years, including startscience.org and teachforkids.org, scaling both internationally. Additionally, he is an acclaimed classical concert pianist and has won numerous awards, including the Jewish Week's 36 Under 36 Most Influential Jewish Americans. More recently, he serves as a co-founder and current CEO of avoMD, which serves as a revolutionary clinician decision support tool that makes dense clinical guidelines, pathways, and recommendations into digestible workflows that save clinicians time and hospital systems money. Currently available for EHR integration or via its standalone web and mobile application. The implications of this new technology results in actionable decision support and improved clinical experience for clinicians. Hey, Dr. Saperstein, really happy to have you today. I appreciate your time.
Pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. And I think we have a lot of really interesting things to unpack today. So let's take things way back to the beginning. Can you tell us a little bit more about who you are and where you're from?
Yep. So I am a New Yorker through and through, born into a physician-heavy family. We've got a lot of docs on our family WhatsApp chat, which we call the medical questions chat. It's almost like a private consult service. So for me, it was really a question of not what was I going to do when what career I would choose, but really how would I have an impact on this field of medicine, something which I really grew up with at the dinner table. And when I went through residency, really even starting in med school, what I found was that I liked to be able to impact broad systemic changes in a way that brought many people together to make those changes.
Mm-hmm.
And this is a reflection back. It's like I much preferred to help install the Wi-Fi system and the two-way communication system for replacing pagers over just the individual interactions where they both had meaning, but one of them was it brought me really this fulfillment of being able to change things in a larger way. And I had an advisor who said, Yair, you got to check out the field of informatics. And so that's how I discovered informatics and started going more into that field.
Wow, that's awesome. And so it probably goes without saying then, like, what sparked your interest in going into medicine? Was it because of this like strong familial like influence on you, or was it more so like you loved medicine and the clinical aspect of things, but you wanted to activate and, like you were saying, develop more of a systemic change?
When I was in college, I knew that for certainty, the only thing that I wouldn't be was to be a doctor. And, obviously I went through college, tried out a lot of different areas. I did chemical battery research, in a lab to be able to build better batteries. I did quantum chemistry and computational chemistry. Um, Went down the lawyer route for a little bit to try out some of those. Didn't find it quite as interesting, and I really liked devices. Like I thought that the human body was like one of the coolest devices, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
It's just so intricate, and there's so much that we don't know. And I thought med school would be interesting. And so by the time I reached the end of college, it was like, okay, I don't know that I want to be a doctor, but I am interested in going through med school just to understand more and to see how, on the system level, there's something I can do to help, to be a part of it. And once I got into med school, I was a little bit more disenchanted by that. And uh, I think being able to discover more of the ways that there's the holistic aspect to clinical care, combining public health together with individual clinical, um, being able to combine technology, and reopened my eyes into it, to say, wow, this is cool because there's not just the human body, but there's all of these other systems that also impact clinical care and the way that we deliver care. And being able to be a part of that, understand it, address it, has become empowering, rather than feeling like there's so much that we can't do because even if we do understand aspects of it, we are restricted by a system.
Mm-hmm. Wow. I mean, I think that's really profound right there. And so you attended Albert Einstein for medical school at this point, but you, as like at a kind of like foundational principle, you were interested in the systems that build out medical school. You weren't necessarily looking at the textbooks and like memorizing all the content in front of you because you were fascinated with the physiology of it. You're more so, why are we learning this particular model? How can we apply this to like an EMR or some kind of other way, the functionality of how the hospital flows? Is that correct? Or
That's probably an even more positive brushstroke over it. I was really trying to figure out how can I make my iPad play back the recorded lectures at 4 times speed, where it was seeming to limit the lectures at 2. And is there some way that I can automate a download of the lectures and putting it into my video app in a folder that I would be able to listen to all of them in one go, to refresh on them quickly. So it was probably solving globally lesser problems, but perhaps more immediate personal problems, which was helpful for me and my immediate friends.
absolutely. And there's that classical saying, work smarter, not harder. So it sounds like you were kind of figuring out a way to optimize your workflow. And they do have a plugin now that allows you to kind of increase the speed indefinitely. So, if you're still looking for something like that, I certainly use it quite a bit.
No, four was probably too much. I actually discovered that I'm more of a visual learner than I am of an audio learner, and so being able to listen to the lectures was really just for me, the sense of not missing out on something. But I really
Mhm.
learned from being able to read and being able to write.
Absolutely. And so I guess like for our listeners who might be considering going to medical school, although you were disenchanted with like the kind of the clinical workflow that you had been exposed to, what would you recommend to individuals who are thinking about going to med school at this point in time?
Um, I would say number one is you should think about if you really want to do it or not. Speak to clinicians and speak to people that are in areas that are not clinical medicine itself,
Hmm.
where they've gained impact and gained insight from going through med school. I'm in that latter category. So when I was going through med school, if people had asked me if they should do it, I would tell them, is this your number one passion above anything else? And, do you want to sit in the library and study? That was not me. Like I was working on nonprofits at the time and trying to set up these nonprofits, allow for the kids who were in public schools in the Bronx areas to come in and work with us under an enrichment program, and then be able to train them and work with them to then go into other schools and teach. And so train students to be teachers, and like that was super fulfilling for me. But
Hmm.
I was not much of a sit in the library and study kind of guy. And then fast forward a little bit, and it's like now I can use the knowledge even of the workflow and even of the way that things are actually working to help improve the system. So, and it's great, and for me there's really a lot of personal meaning in it. But I one of my passions is to allow for people within clinical medicine who might feel that the same sense that they're stuck, to realize that there's a world outside and that there's a way of improving the world of medicine without needing to be only clinical
Hmm.
or without needing to be clinical, and having that understanding, and then other learnings that you have in working with other people, you can apply what you learn to be able to improve and change the system.
Absolutely. I think there's a lot of really great points in there. And don't worry, we're going to explore some of the, I guess, like nonprofit organizations that you've established in a little bit. But I think you're right. The structure of medicine at this point kind of forces a lot of people and funnels them through just doing only clinical pathways. And it's almost like taboo to kind of discuss some of those non-traditional roles. And so I think like
Yeah.
kind of part of this podcast, and as well as the mission that you've set out to do, has been to kind of highlight some of these really like nuanced areas that you can kind of find fulfillment in, and not just in like working in a hospital and doing the daily grind. So I think that's awesome.
I was just going to add that there are these communities of people who are either non-traditional medicine or start clinical and became non-traditional. There's Slack groups. There's other groups of to connect. Like there's MD for ML or MD plus. These
Hmm.
different groups that allow for these communities to come together and share ideas, and those are super fulfilling as well.
Absolutely. And I've been plugging the MD Plus community in the last couple podcast episodes because some of the prior guests I've had have actually been through that as well. So it's kind of fun. Really, really great platform to learn about all these different avenues for sure. And so, kind of exploring a little bit more, you ended up getting through medical school, of course. And why did you end up choosing internal medicine as like a potential, career and profession? Why didn't you consider like possibly not even going down the residency route?
I certainly did. So in med school, I worked or traveled through 14 countries. And when I was in Uganda for a 2 month or so stint, part of me was thinking of staying there. And it was awesome. I was helping set up a village health worker program. My role was really to do a needs assessment of the community, to
Hmm.
understand what they wanted and to make sure that whatever we would help to implement would be in accord with what they want. Do they even want a village health worker program? And if they do, how would they want it set up? Before we would go too far, it's part of my dilemma in even going there was, are we imposing on them our ideas? It's global health, but I'm going there. Like, what right do I have to go there? And then you go there and you
Hmm.
realize, oh, there's Coca-Cola everywhere, and it's like we've done impact already in a way that may not be the most positive. So if there's a
Hmm.
way of having a positive impact, but doing it in a way that incorporates their needs, that'll be great. And for me, it was like global health is fulfilling. Like this is great. And I ended up coming back for family reasons and personal reasons, and I was not dead set on going into residency. I actually applied for a biopharmaceutical job. Ended up not going down that route in the end of the day, but I the pharmaceutical job that I was looking at, the practices of what exactly I would do and the tactics to do it weren't exactly didn't fit my nature as much,
Hmm.
and so I took a look at internship and residency. Thought maybe I'll go for a year, we'll figure it out, and I applied broadly. I applied to internal medicine, family medicine, and emergency medicine,
Wow.
and I explained on my interviews that I really care about work-life balance, and I care about the ability to make an impact, and I would love to take part in a systemic change and see where gaps are, and if there's some way to be able to help. And SUNY Downstate was great. They were like, yes, we understand that need, and we'd like to support and foster that. And I told them I'll probably be like the hardest working resident at the same time, but like let me take part in some
Hmm.
of these systemic gaps also. And through Downstate, we were able to set up a wellness committee, which then became the university wellness committee, internal medicine residency newsletter, so that we can have a voice. We were able to set up as part of the wellness program that we could do a ski trip and a rafting trip, really help boost the morale. We set up an open mic night so that people can come together. The talent in the university is incredible. Some of these things that we're able to come together as a community that really allowed us to bond and work with each other as a whole. The doctors work well with the nurses, work well with the tech, text, work well with the staff, work well with the admin, because we're all
Mhm.
together. We're, this is what we're doing, as opposed to like, oh no, it's not my role, it's not my place. So it was really nice to do that. But it it was not something that I was dead set on. It was much
Mhm.
more like, let's see where the opportunities are, and there was just a good opportunity within Downstate.
Absolutely. I mean, it sounds like you were saying that you weren't entirely sure the pathway that you were going to take, but you kind of moved forward with the kind of the traditional, like, oh, you should try it out and see what you can do. And it sounds like you really made it kind of your own experience where you were building out all of these different like community-based platforms and ways to kind of engage with, all your coworkers and stuff. And I think that's awesome. We need more residents who are going to be proactive about doing that stuff to build better, kind of community amongst each other and at the hospitals that they serve. And so additionally too, I noticed you obtained your master's of public health kind of simultaneously throughout residency. When did that really come about? I know obviously you have an interest in like global health, so it's probably a no-brainer, but how, like, can you walk us through like the process?
Yeah, definitely not a no-brainer. All of these things is, for me, like, I didn't have this path that was set out in front of me that I was going down. It was much more, my eyes were open for opportunities, and if the opportunity was right, I would very thankfully take it. And
Hmm.
so, in my downstate interview, they had mentioned that there are scholarships available for MPH. And I was like, free money. That sounds great. And also interesting. This
Hmm.
is interesting. So well, I didn't take it right away. I was like,
Hmm.
I got to see what internship is like. And then as I started going through internship, I had a little bit of that like claustrophobic feeling that I had from med school. Like, why is everyone so focused just on one individual patient, but not thinking about the system? Like, I remember a patient showed up in the ER and said, my primary care doc told me to come to this ER so that I can get an MRI because it's not covered by insurance. So I have to show up in the ER in order to get the MRI done.
Hmm.
And uh, this was at a place that I was rotating in previously. So, it's just, I remember this and it had an impact on me. And I remember thinking at the time, like, wait a second, why is this happening? Like, there's loopholes to be able to get this individual, but then, the whole thing falls apart if everyone's doing it. And I was told, you learn what practically happens as you do different rotations. And I was told this is just what happens. Like, you have to learn how to work within the system, and the insurance company is trying to stop it, but the patient actually needs it and they can't wait this long. So therefore it happens. And it's like, wait a second, why can't we improve it at the insurance level if the patient does need it? And why can't there be some agreement? And, of course there's going to be this back and forth, but
Hmm.
that head to head of the public health versus individual health definitely had an impact. So at some point when I started to feel this claustrophobic feeling again during residency or during internship, I was like, okay, let me take advantage of this opportunity and go try it out. And it was
Hmm.
awesome, eye opening, people involved in like the other side, and I'm in between, and it being that nexus in between, I'm able to learn from both and also to transmit from both. Like, all right, here's my learnings on this side. Like, here's what's actually
Hmm.
going on here. The projects that we're able to span across both. It was great. It was great.
That's awesome. I guess my follow-up question would have been, do you recommend all residents kind of obtain some kind of additional advanced learning degree throughout residency? Like, I think like obviously the interest is certainly there, but how did you manage like the work-life balance when it came to kind of handling your residency responsibilities on top of doing all of the extracurricular things that you're doing on top of that?
Yeah, so my answer to both of your questions, it wasn't about the degree. I didn't know if I was going to finish it or not. I didn't know if I would get the degree or not. I wanted to be
Hmm.
among a cohort of people that were looking at medicine more broadly
Hmm.
and to be able to learn from them. So I didn't know if I was going to finish. In fact, I there were some classes that I didn't show up to as much as maybe necessarily required. But again, I'm a visual learner, so I learned from the books.
Hmm.
Um, but then the group projects, like, that's the stuff that really spoke to my heart. That I showed up every time. I figured out how to make up what come in at 5 a.m. to residency to make sure that I can get out by 4 p.m. to make it to that group project meeting.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's just like the things that you're passionate about, especially for me when there's other people that are involved and that passion is contagious. Like, you just figure out how to make it work. And would I say that you have to get a degree? No. Would I say that you should like expand your learning, your projects, the people that you're working with to be able to broaden out and see what else is out there? Definitely. Like look for something you can continually learn.
Absolutely. And so, on top of all of this that you were doing, you also completed a chief year of residency. Is that correct? And you got a board certification in clinical informatics. So, I feel like that term itself is almost kind of nebulous. So, do you mind like sharing a little bit more about what necessarily inspired you to get into informatics, and could you give us a definition for it?
Yeah, so as you say nebulous, I'm taking a look at the screen behind you, which definitely looks like a nebulous cloud there. Uh, but yeah, the chief year, I love teaching. And I also love, again, these systemic processes. The chief year was the ability to do what I love. It wasn't a step to get to the next place. It itself was the goal.
Hmm.
And to be able to really do that. And chief year was a real chief year. It was did an epic implementation where I was the informatics liaison. It was COVID and being able to both ride through and help guide through COVID in the heart of Brooklyn in the first wave. Um, and then the informatics degree, in residency, I had started avoMD, and in selling avoMD to health systems, I sell to CMIOs, among others. And if I'm selling to CMIOs, it doesn't matter necessarily how much information I have and how much I can share and how much I can talk about. For some people, the degree does matter. And I always say, learn first, degree second.
Hmm.
And so for informatics, I had the informatics knowledge. And as I was going through, I went through the fellowship interview trail. Most
Hmm.
of the interviewers said to me, I don't understand why you would do fellowship. You're already doing informatics. It sounds like you're doing what you love. Why do this formal training? And on reflecting, it was like, you're right. That is my philosophy. So I wrote to the ABPM to be able to just sit in for the boards. And so obviously studied from a review book
Hmm.
as per my style of learning. And most of the things were things that I had been able to experience, like the change management process and getting buy-in from key stakeholders and AI and ML and some of these things that were clinical decision support,
Hmm.
etc. So that was the informatics degree, and it was mostly just so that as I'm speaking to CMIOs, I'm able to speak from a level that they would appreciate, from a title perspective. And so um, as far as it didn't take more years to do. It was just being able to sit for the boards for that.
Wow, that's awesome. It's definitely like an inspiration to anyone who's kind of curious and taking like a similar pathway. I didn't realize that you were able to like do that. I think that's really cool.
I think it's still open. Don't hold me to that, but I think it's still open for people that are 2 years out, and then have done informatics for at least, I think it's a third or quarter of their time.
Hmm.
Um, like zero point 0.3 FTEs or something like that. You can take a look. They have the requirements spelled out on their website.
Wow, that's super cool. And so, kind of transitioning to like the next segment of the podcast, I want to get into more of like your startup business and your nonprofit experience. And so, can you tell us a little bit more about like the startscience.org and teachforkids.org specifically?
So, Start Science, I was in college volunteering with a chemistry club. We went to a public school that had recently built they built science labs, but they didn't have enough funding to get science teachers. And when I was there in this chemistry magic show, it was awesome. Like I was able to, I'm not sure if I should really share these tricks that we did at the time, but super cool stuff like light your hand on fire with soapy methane bubbles so that it looks like you're holding fire, and like the stuff that would have made me go into STEM when I was in fourth grade. And so
Hmm.
obviously the kids were excited, the teachers were excited, and they said, would you come back and teach here other times? And I love teaching. So I was like,
Hmm.
that's great, but also I'm a college student. So I sent out an email on my school listserv and I was like, anybody want to come with me? I'm thinking of volunteering to teach in this public school. Got back like 70 replies. And
Wow.
it's like, how do we do that? There's a lot of people, there's a lot of excitement. So I went to my advisor at the time um, who's been like a lifelong mentor, and she was like, "All right, let's sit down and let's map this out. Like,
Mm-hmm.
who's going to come when, and how do you leverage these people? Like, you want to be able to have this impact." I was like, "Okay, let's do it." So we mapped out, we built a curriculum, pitched that curriculum to the school. They loved it. Brought in a news crew and for the first one, and we had, I can't even remember who had contacted the news, probably us, and then it was like super exciting. We did the first lesson, and everyone was very, very excited about it. And then the news actually came out with a report that was like, look at the state of our Department of Education, that we don't have enough money to pay for real teachers, and it has to be only volunteers, and how dismal this is.
Mm-hmm.
So as soon as that report came out, I learned two things. One is that you can never trust the news 100%. And then the second is that there is something called resilience, because I got a call, and I remember it was like the most disheartened feeling from the principal, who said that we're out. All this excitement, all this planning, we're done. Because how can we be there after such a negative report that we were a part of, even though we didn't cause?
Mm-hmm.
Um, it was understandable. And so I remember going to my advisor later that day, and I said to her, it's feel like I messed up. Feel like I messed up big time. And she reassured me. She was like, no, this happens. Welcome to the reality of the world. Like, you have a good program. You have all the volunteers. You have a whole curriculum.
Mm-hmm.
We have funding to get supplies. Like, there's a lot of public schools that have need. Why don't you go to another one? Like, I'll go with you in person. Let's see what they say. So we showed up at the next public school. I don't remember if it was that day, another day nearby. Told them the whole story and asked them if they wanted us to come there, and they said yes. And we started a week later, ran it successfully for a year in that public school. By the end of that year, the first public school wanted us back, and they realized it wasn't something that we had intended or caused purposely. And
Mm-hmm.
so we started then working at two. We expanded to a third public school. By the time I left college, we had about 300 volunteers. We were working across 5 public schools. We had gotten grant funding, not just from the college, but beyond. And then I went to med school, and I told you that like collapsing feeling, where I found the Dell Social Innovation Challenge. And the
Mm-hmm.
challenge was basically, if you have an idea and you want to be able to spread it globally, then feel free to apply. And we did, and we came in semifinalists. And through that publicity, we expanded branches across the US, in Canada. And I remember getting an email from a guy named Knowledge Hikundi from Zimbabwe, and I immediately sent it to spam. And then I was like, as it was going to spam, something caught my eye that it said Start Science. So I took it out of spam and I read it, and it was, I saw Start Science in the Dell Social Innovation Challenge. Can we bring it to Zimbabwe? And I wrote back, this is very interesting. Can we get on a call? Like,
Mm-hmm.
somebody's writing to me from Zimbabwe. I didn't, my experience with it was that they were asking me for an Apple Play card or something, an Apple
Mm-hmm.
Store card, and can I put in the numbers? So it was definitely a biased opinion. And so I wrote back, can we get on a call just to make sure it's a real person? And I got on with one of the most brilliant entrepreneurial people I've ever met, this guy Knowledge, who said, we love what you've done with Start Science. We want to be able to bring it to Zimbabwe. Can you help? And we did. So we brought it to Zimbabwe. We were able to actually take some of those kids, worked with the government here to bring them into the Intel Science Fair, where they placed. Believe it or not, this past year, I met one of those kids that placed. It was a chance occurrence that was pretty wild itself. But anyway, that's how it started. So through all of this process, we realized, okay, we really should become an entity, a 501c3, tax exempt, set everything up. We got help from um, actually the college's law school, the affiliate law school, Cardozo,
Mm-hmm.
helped us set it up. And then we grew the network. And so it's basically these branches in different places, ran it for like 10 plus years. And we wrote it through COVID, where we morphed it into something that was virtual education, sending packages so that they're able to still do the science experiments at home.
Hmm.
Now morphed back to this combo, like hybrid combo. Um, and I successfully handed it off to different leadership. Still stay attached. It's my baby, so to
Hmm.
speak, but still stay attached. But successfully handed it off. When I was in med school, I saw these kids in inpatient hospital playrooms, and it was like there might be a way to adapt that same model to do these hands-on, you know, do science experiments together with us, and
Hmm.
get excited for STEM, but also have company and have, like I said, there's reading, writing, arithmetic, and recreation, and it's like you can have all of them in one. So we used to share supplies and use some of the supplies for these and then return it, and eventually we got our own separate stream of funding to be able to run this one, and that was called Teach Together, Educating All Children in Hospitals. So I remember some of my friends joking that I was a one-trick pony, because it was the same concept, just with a different population that needed help. And we had med
Hmm.
student volunteers, and then that spread throughout the country. It turned it into a 501c3, spread internationally. Also ran it for about 10 years before successfully handing it off. And on that one, it was like a different population, right? A different population of volunteers,
Hmm.
a different population of kids that we were serving, even slightly different goals. It wasn't to excite kids in STEM. It was really to have this recreational aspect when you're stuck in an inpatient hospital ward, right? And how can we run these projects in the playroom that they can join us and take part in. So that was the journey of the nonprofits.
Wow. I mean, I think that's incredible. Like, did you ever think to yourself, like, when you were first starting this out, that it would scale to something as large as it has then? Like, when looking back all those years, thinking about, the origin story of that, like, I just think it's incredible that you just kind of stuck with it throughout that entire process to then have it, fully funded, 503c, all that kind of information, like all that stuff that has gone into it. Like, could you have ever imagined where it could have gone?
Um, I didn't. It was just like, this is something fun that has a positive impact that other people are joining, and there's this shared passion. Like, I had never dissected a sheep heart before, and we were supposed to teach the kids the following week, like the different chambers and the different like all the different parts that you're going to see, and the mitral valve, and like I had
Hmm.
never done that. So we had to get a sheep heart so that we could have our practice beforehand, and the other guys would, and it's the other volunteers would teach me and each other, like, okay, here's the process, here's what we're going through, this is what it is. And we all learned in conjunction with our curriculum, so that when we would actually go in, it's like we knew what we were talking about. And it was like, this collaborative passion just fuels these objectives. So we had I remember the admissions committee and office within Yeshiva University would donate swag to us as prizes that we could give out when the kids got our quiz questions at the end, right?
Hmm.
And we did cool stuff like make ice cream by lowering the temperature,
Hmm.
by including salt into ice so that it has a lower freezing point. We did like um, make a roller coaster out of by turning potential energy into kinetic energy, and see how your marbles can actually go across the whole room. We did build an actual working light bulb out of magnets and wires, which, like, all these things flabbergasted me because they worked. And like, it's like you do it beforehand and it actually works. And if it's exciting enough for us, it'll also be exciting enough for them. And then it's like, not just do our volunteers become teachers and it fuels the process, but the students that we taught also became teachers, whether with us
Hmm.
or just separately as teachers. And it's like, I still run into people who are like, oh, I remember you from Start, and you should know I'm now a teacher at this high school, and we had this inspiration, and it's like so fulfilling to have this. And I don't think about the endpoint. It's more like, are we having fun today? Is this
Hmm.
something good? Like, let's do it.
Yeah, I think that's such a great mindset, and especially like this had such a profound impact on like your audience that it led to all of these like interactions down the line that have just kind of showed the impact that you've had on them. So I think that's really cool, and it's really good like positive feedback to encourage you to continue to do more and more things like that as well. And so kind of speaking on like the next like big segment, and I'm really interested to explore this today, but let's talk a little bit about avoMD. So like what is this product and why did you create it in the first place?
So the product is a clinician support platform, and we help clinicians do their job in a way that does not just help them do their job, but helps them be more efficient and also do better clinical care. And so there's these classic clinical decision support systems that usually fail because one of two reasons. One is classic clinical decision support is just alerts, and they're all vying for the clinician's attention. Like, you
Hmm.
can't get my attention. There are way too many other priorities that I have, and why should I get your priority over any of these other 150 other ones that I have in an hour
Hmm.
or in a minute? Right? And so that's one. The second is, it's like, let's say somehow you do get it to work, it's probably going to take an inordinate amount of IT resources to be able to set that up. And so you could set it up, but then how about the maintenance of it? And then also, like, you can set that up for one disease state or project. Are you
Hmm.
going to replicate that for all of the others and maintain it for all the others? The way that we think about it is much more of a give clinicians love, give clinicians what we want, right? So help me do my note writing. Is there a way that you can be a note validator where, I have my note templates and I have the things that I currently do? How can you check that against the guidelines to suggest for me, here are things that you might want to speak about with the patient? In accord with that, how can you give me a synopsis of the most important things that I need to know from the patient's chart, so that I
Hmm.
can have synopsis and things that I might want to consider for going forward? How can you draft a note for me? For example, ICU downgrade, and I need to convert that into a regular note. All of these things that really can and should be automated,
Hmm.
so that I have more time with my patients and more time to continue to help building these systems, right? How do I not have to do these things that are tasks? Furthermore, like linking into orders and being able to have a decision tree, so to speak, that can automatically generate orders and pend these orders for me so that I can just review it and accept it or make any changes within the pending cart.
Hmm.
These are the kinds of things that we are helping clinicians with. One last one that I'll mention is billing and coding, the bane of my existence, to be basically a dictionary or thesaurus that is comparing these billing codes to what's going on and trying to put these words together so that I can bill appropriately at a level that is right, not too high, not too low, and represents my patient. And if I can just have this text that's automatically going to convert to billing, like, that'll be great. And so in a sentence, right, it's like taking all of the inputs about the patient, perhaps including my conversation with the patient, because we can
Hmm.
incorporate ambient listening, process it in accord with the guidelines, and do my tasks, notes, orders, billing as I need it. That's what we are. At the same time, we are not stressing out the IT systems of health systems,
Hmm.
because our back end is no code, which is a concept meaning that you don't need to know how to code. You don't need to be a programmer to use it. So we spare the informatics team from the horizontal spread, meaning you do a single install and then you're able to use it for your heart failure pathways, diabetes, COPD, AFib, etc., which is
Hmm.
controlled on the clinical side. In fact, we've partnered with the top 25 societies, medical societies across the US, who are putting in their guidelines into our system so that those are available off the shelf. And then you can customize it or create your own as a system, as a health system for your providers, for your clinicians. So that's the software. And then why did I start it? When I was in residency, I told you I love to build systems, I loved efficiency, but one thing I
Hmm.
didn't tell you is I loved swimming in the Coney Island Ocean, also Manhattan Beach, which was close enough to residency. And you don't usually think of swimming with residency, but for me, it was really a need for efficiency so that I can get out. And you might say, well, if I was running to the group projects with the MPH, so how did I get out to also swim? There were those
Hmm.
days that I could get out. But the only way I could get out is if I made my process super fast. think like note drafts for certain clinical conditions that I stored in Google Drive. Think like index cards that I wrote out pathways that I took pictures of and I had it in Google Photos. Think
Mm-hmm.
like very basic shareable clinical decision support. Right. And so that's kind of that's the style that I had. And then when I went to this informatics program at Columbia during residency, I did a 2-week elective there. I met my co-founder, PJ.
Mm-hmm.
PJ is much smarter than I am. He's a programmer turned doctor. And he was building this for years before I met him as an app. And what he built was a Google Sheets that could translate to a mobile app. And when I saw what he did, it was basically my index cards that could also have my draft templates. And I was like, dude, you're building my dream. We got to work together. And so that's really how it started. For him, it was like he's been doing this for years.
Mm-hmm.
And then suddenly I meet him and it's like, who are you? And for me, it was like, I just met this guy that's building my dream, you know? So it came together. We ended up definitely adapting his software that we had to form the backbone of avoMD. And then expanded it on each of the sides. That Google Sheets turned into a no-code backend platform that allowed for the construction or modifying of these pathways and algos. Um, we allow for people to create or use off-the-shelf calculators, decision support pathways, integrative HIPAA-secure chat GPT in the EHR, pulling in from different elements, like pull in the medications, pull in the labs, process it against a permanent but uh, dynamic chat GPT prompt, because based on the inputs, it will automatically change the prompt within the
Mm-hmm.
builder. And all this can be set up without needing to know how to code because it's all drag and drop and text based, that
Mm-hmm.
kind of stuff. And then on the front end, it was like, okay, mobile app is great, but in order to do all this stuff, you have to be integrated into the source of truth for clinicians, which really is the EHR.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody asked me recently, like a day or two ago, like, uh, avoMD is so not innovative because it's a bolt-on to Epic, and I think that is missing the boat. That perspective on the need to fit into the workflow and to deal with whatever is currently here, even as you work to change that workflow.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so for us, we integrated with Epic and Athena and others to be able to work within the workflow and to be able to help within the workflow itself, both in and out of the EHR, wherever the clinician is that needs us. So that was kind of the journey from what I needed to seeing what PJ had actually built. Fast forward a little bit, and before we had built this backend platform, the no
Mm-hmm.
code part of it, people were writing to me and saying, hey, you got to change this, you got to change that. And I was like, that's taking away from my swimming time. Like, we got to make this scalable. So that was really a lot of the motivation, believe it or not, into got to build this part into a scalable, give it to somebody else to effectively delegate this backend platform, which allowed us to give health systems the ability to build and give
Mm-hmm.
societies the ability to build.
Wow. I mean, there's definitely a lot to unpack there too, but I think it's so cool that you took a lot of these pain points that you had throughout residency and you found a technical co-founder, which is obviously very convenient. I'm not sure if you have any like coding experience yourself, but that certainly helps like kind of getting the project off the ground. You kind of had the vision, he had the technical skills to make it happen. So it sounds
The
like it
only
was a what's that?
the only real coding experience I had was in those codes which was a cardiac arrest, and I had to code the patient. But otherwise, no. It's I was blessed to find PJ.
That's awesome. And so like then with all that in mind, what kind of like roles do you guys have at this point? Do you handle more of the like the marketing, the design, the pitch, the kind of front end stuff and he handles the technical? Or have you scaled up to this point like you're saying where you've outsourced it to these other EMRs to kind of handle everything? Like from a business perspective, where are you guys at with building your team?
We've got about 20 full time now.
Mhm.
So PJ and I picked up a third co-founder, Lawrence. Lawrence is a business guy, did private equity investing before we met him. We met him while he was in Columbia Business School. He was running the health club as part of Columbia Business School.
Mhm.
And, PJ and I are doctors. Doctors are notoriously bad at business. I know how to run companies, I guess, because of the nonprofits. So management is fine, but how to
Hmm.
make money, that has I needed to learn. I probably still need to learn, right? But then I really needed to learn. And so we asked for advice, and, Lawrence came and he was amazing. We were like, okay, we got to get this guy on the team. So that was the three of us. And we split it with PJ really running mostly product and engineering, Lawrence running money, and me running other things.
Hmm.
So sales, marketing, and so on. And then as it developed, founder roles overlap and
Hmm.
sometimes interchange. And now we have a VP of marketing, we have a chief commercial officer, we have two VPs of sales, we have a big engineering team under PJ. Lawrence is running HR and has done an incredible job at hiring. And it's like, you figure out where these roles are and always establish swim lanes so that you don't
Hmm.
step on each other's toes too much. But it's a dynamic process.
Absolutely. And I also saw recently that you guys had recently secured $5 million in pre-seed funding. Is that correct?
So we did a 3 million pre-seed and now a 5 million seed,
Wow.
gearing up for the next funding round, end of this year, beginning of next year.
Wow, that's fascinating. Well, I'm really excited to see, this avoMD on every EMR. It certainly could come to Buffalo.
I'll tell you, we have a non-EHR application also, and we're letting clinicians use it for free. So
Okay.
anyone that wants to be able to use it, yeah, you can access it on avoMD.io, or if you want to go in directly, it's live.avomd.io. We're
Hmm.
also very happy to work with any systems where you might want it in the EHR. So feel free to make those introductions anytime, and we'll talk to the system, see if we can get them to download it within your system.
Absolutely. Well, we're getting close to the end of the interview at this point in time, and I just want to explore our famous three questions that I ask every person who's been on the podcast before. So, as a founder, it can obviously be very difficult to step away from the business. There's always something that you can possibly doing to kind of move the ball down the field, even a few more yards. So, how do you maintain some semblance of like a work-life balance to guarantee that you still get to get out there and do your swimming activities and whatnot? How do you do this?
I have much more of a work-life integration than a work-life balance, and it's always been that way. Um, so, sometimes I frame it as work-life balance, but it's really, when I remember traveling to meet with a bunch of customers that we had at a conference, and on the way there, we passed by a lake, and I stopped
Hmm.
for an hour, threw on my swimming trunks that I had brought, went for a swim, and then dried off and hopped right back in the car to make it to the meeting on time. So it's stealing these moments and making sure that you can steal enough of these moments. Um, the nice thing about doing things that are fulfilling is that it doesn't feel like work at all times. There certainly is work, and there is certainly those times that it feels like work. Um, but there is enough of a fulfillment that you have you have happiness in what you're doing there too. And so, it's really more of a balance of the people that you're committed to, the other relationships that you have in your life, the other things that you want to be able to do, and then making sure that you have the time to be able to do that, where they're all important. And so you have to figure out how to slot them in parallel, sequentially, however it works out well, and sometimes take stock on, okay, here's where I am, here's what's going on, here's what I need to do, and you can always reset.
Absolutely. And then moving on to our second question. Do you have any last minute recommendations to students, dreamers, or other startup founders interested in pursuing a career similar to your own?
Last minute recommendations. This is an always recommendation. Find the opportunities with your eyes open and then grab them. I've been blessed throughout my life that I really have not had this path that I'm planning to go down. And it's really more looking for these opportunities. And if the opportunity seems right, look into it and then take it. A lot of people I have heard complain to me that, opportunities will just pass them by. And as somebody who is trying to find a career like this, you definitely want to take advantage of the opportunities when they come by.
Absolutely. And last but not least, what are your personal, professional, or business oriented goals that you'd like to accomplish in the next 5 to 10 years?
Personal, professional, business. Personal, continue learning, continue growing the relationships that are meaningful.
Mhm.
Professional is also a continue learning. I guess that provides a lot of meaning. Also, continue teaching. Um, and on a business level, I, similar to you, want to see avoMD continue to expand, not necessarily to all EHRs, but to basically everywhere that clinicians are. Our focus is still on North America, but you gave me 5 to 10 years, so I think that's enough to be able to expand it more globally, and to really be able to improve the lives of clinicians and thereby improve the way of delivering and the giving of clinical care.
Absolutely. And the fact that you already have experience scaling something to an international level, I could definitely foresee that in the future. Alrighty, so we've come to the end of our interview today, and I'd like to thank all of our listeners for the support. If you have any additional questions about the medical school journey or entrepreneurial topics, check out my website at www.physicianpharmacist.com. Before we let you go, Dr. Saperstein, how can our listeners get in touch with you or learn more about you?
Easiest way is LinkedIn. Yair Saperstein on LinkedIn. Feel free to pop me a message anytime. You can also go to the avoMD website, where there's a contact us page in case you have any difficulty on the LinkedIn front. I'm always happy to have conversations and to figure out ways of working together and ways that we can learn from each other.
Fantastic. Well, thank you again for being on the podcast. I recognize you're an extremely busy individual, so I really do appreciate your time today.
It's a pleasure. Nice to be with you on the podcast.
Alrighty, take care.